What's up, everybody? It is Friday, September 5th, and this is the first edition of the NFL show, the daily fantasy NFL show here on InsidersTV, sponsored by FantasyElite, the app that you can get in the App Store. We had Davis Maddock and Mr. Tuttle05 do a draft, so we'll show those results later in the show. But yeah, want to introduce everybody. Can we start with the big name first?
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I mean,
Soccer Dave here. Soccer Dave here,
and then
show, but... yeah. No, I am David Kitchen, Soccer Dave. You might know me as one of the DraftKings pros. And then, of course, we have Mr. Evan Silva from RotoWorld.com. One of the biggest names in fantasy football. Does not care for the Raiders. That's pretty clear if you follow him on Twitter. But Evan, what's up, man?
I don't not like the Raiders. I just don't like their GM, and I think that they're a team that has no prayer. So I want to clarify that. But I'm really excited to talk football with you dudes, and I know that Davis has also felt the wrath of the Raiders Twitter. So he knows how it feels. It hurts.
I can vouch. They're not logical. They think that Darren McFadden still is like a top 10 talent in this league. Like, those are the sort of things that you get when Raiders fans enter your mentions.
Wait, McFadden doesn't have upside?
Just very, very little. Maybe 4 years ago
he did. RotoViz said he was one of the top breakout candidates.
Great. You gotta understand.
Now my 250 championship team is screwed because I drafted him over Jeremy Hill, which probably was a big mistake.
Why would you do such a thing?
I don't know.
Who told you that was okay?
Not you. Davis Maddock there, one of the writers of our sites. And Davis, your hair is looking really nice, especially since you just had a hat on. This is like the first time I've ever asked Davis to take off an article of clothing. It kind of sounded weird. But yeah, Davis looking good. And then Dan Gasper, Mr. Tuttle05, the guy that was the guy that won the award for most accurate daily fantasy player last year, qualified for all three events, and one of the co-founders here at FantasyInsiders.com. So we have a big week ahead of us. Like Sunday, we've been waiting for this. Obviously, there's like all sorts of prizes. You look at DraftKings, FanDuel, Fantasy Aces is running something out. You've got FantasyElite running like draftable slates in their bracket blast-off tournament that we're in. So it's Sunday's going to hit hard. And Evan, I want to get your opinion just on what you think for like all the hype. I mean, fantasy football seems like starts earlier and earlier every year, as of course you are. I mean, it's your full-time job. So all the hype leading into week one, what do you think is how do you think that's going to translate to like actual results as far as like the touts go, the hyped up players? Do you think that's going to translate into week one, like top performers?
Some of the stuff will work out and some of the stuff won't. That's just how it always is, man.
All right,
Ladarius Green, Travis Kelce, we'll see.
My guys.
Even Zach Ertz, I think. We'll see. That's the position that probably got the most hype in terms of breakout candidates. And you look at the breakout candidates that were supposed to happen last year: Zach Sudfeld, Rob Hausler. Some guys did hit. Julius Thomas hit huge.
Jordan Cameron was the one who saw the Ladarius Green spike in ADP last offseason. Julius Thomas never got like above the 14th round.
That's true. Julius Thomas was getting picked up, before week one, even after week one.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see. Some guys will go nuts, other guys won't. I'm pretty skeptical about every single coin flip tight end. That's how I'd like to characterize them. And I wouldn't want to start any of them in daily, to be perfectly frank. I'd rather roll with a guy like Heath Miller, who I know is going to be out there for every snap. Look at the wide receivers on Pittsburgh. These dudes are midgets. No Lance Moore this week. I like Heath Miller, man. I like him a lot this week.
You and Dan are going to get along so well.
I think so.
Yeah. team hot takes. There,
No,
it's gonna be on
team
a lonely
like reasonable,
island. Yeah.
rational, logical takes.
Yeah, Davis, you're gonna be.
Yeah, as opposed to like recommending every guy that's like a questionable guy with decent upside.
Yeah, so
we stick with the true guys that give you your consistent targets per game that you can rely on.
So normally we talk about like the quarterback, but the tight end situation came up yesterday. It came up today. Like it's a big source of just people talking about it for week 1 because, like you said, you've got Kelsey, you got Ladarius Green. We had like a 10-minute discussion on Antonio Gates yesterday. Both Leone and JJ Zachariason, late round QB, like him for week 1. But then you've got, Gronkowski, whose price is probably too high, considering he might be having limited snaps this week. So you've got the 2 top guys probably in Graham and Julius Thomas. Dan, I know you talked about earlier, you really like Julius Thomas this week.
Yeah, especially on DraftKings for his price. I think that was one of the things that jumped out at me first when going through DraftKings pricing. Was Julius Thomas at 5,800. And then I think on FanDuel with how soft their salary is, I think you're doing it wrong if you don't go Thomas or Jimmy Graham. I think you just want a steady guy week 1 that you know is going to get the targets, that you has high upside at the same time. So you're getting the high floor but high ceiling as well. I think that's the way to go as opposed to going and gambling on guys like Kelsey and Ertz even is a gamble to me.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Like we talked about it. I think it was Denny Carter that was saying he's going to be highly owned this week, and I don't know. If he is, like, it would surprise me just because of the number of options out there.
Well, he popped up. The article that Trevor put out today, the Follower Fade article, you can see that on our homepage. Ertz was one of the higher owned tight ends. It looks like right around that 18 to 22% range in $25 head-to-heads, or $25 50-50s. So he's high owned this week.
Yes.
Well, I ran out Travis Kelsey and all the head-to-heads that locked yesterday that I posted.
Well, of course you would.
No, I believe. I'm actually. I want to hear Evan's take on Kelsey with Bo out.
Right. So during the preseason, Travis Kelsey was about a 30 or 40% player with the first team offense. Only played in two tight end sets. It's just kind of wishful thinking to assume that all of a sudden he's going to become a full-time player in their offense, and it may make sense to you and I. Because we see, no Bo. We see the wide receivers are some guy named Frankie Hammond and another guy named Junior Hemingway and Donnie Avery. We know that those guys aren't good. But, we don't know what Andy Reid is going to do. Andy Reid is making the decisions, not Davis Maddock. It makes sense to us. It makes sense to us, but, man, over the course of the season, Travis Kelsey has never played in an NFL game. So over the course of the season, I know we're just talking about week 1 here, but we need big-time production from tight ends for them to pay off. And that goes to a daily level as well. What if Andy Reid just sees, Travis Kelsey gets 5 targets this week. He thinks that's like a good workload. Travis Kelsey plays 45% of the snaps. That doesn't really help you in fantasy. That's not what we want. So good luck to you, and there is definitely a chance that he could pay off, but I think that if you're looking at it from a percentages angle, Travis Kelsey is like 60% to do not very much, and maybe 40% or maybe 20% to be mediocre, and maybe 20% tops to really go off. So good luck to you, man. But I don't think he's strong. Not a strong bet.
I actually do agree with you. I think that's probably the right take. But what I was thinking is just that with there being so much volatility, if Kelsey does do Travis Kelsey things and he does that 20%, he scores a long touchdown or something, I feel like that right there is enough to swing my head-to-heads. And if it's not, and Jimmy Graham goes off, and I'm against him in a bunch of games, I think that I can make up for it by spending on having both Charles and McCoy, or having Charles, Demarius, and two mid-tier wide receivers that I really like. Although I do think on the Sunday onlys, Jimmy Graham is the way to go. Have you made a decision on that, Dan, or are you still debating between Julius and Jimmy?
It's Julius is pretty much locked in on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's going to kind of be between the two. But kind of to go back to the point, going a 4,500 tight end versus Jimmy Graham, even, let's just take him for example. I mean, what you're looking at, one of those $4,500 tight ends, their ceiling is pretty dang close to Jimmy Graham's floor when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough right there just to look at it that way, to say, okay, I'm not going to gamble with such a soft salary cap and go at a $4,500 tight end.
Yeah. I think FanDuel as opposed to DraftKings, I almost think that I'm more willing to use Kelce or Ertz or one of those other, not Ladarius Green, probably Kelce or Ertz on DraftKings, so that you can fit in some more reliable stuff, just because of their floor there at 3,200. And it allows you to basically have a little bit more cap. Like if you go cheap at tight end and you go relatively cheap at quarterback, you can get, just playing around with some of the options, you can get some nice players. Davis, I showed you my team yesterday on DraftKings. It's like an all Davis Maddock upside team. Had Justin Hunter on there, had Kelce. It was a sexy team. Peyton Manning paired with both. I think it was both of the Broncos wide receivers, Manny Sanders and Demarius. So it was a sexy team there. But it's I feel like on DraftKings there are way more strategies than on FanDuel, where there's 3 strategies max.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's where do you want to go cheap at? You go cheap at one position, and the other positions you just go. It's basic. A lot of Sean Hill yesterday. So Evan, your take on Sean Hill and people him being the only quarterback. Just forget price for a second. Just tell me how you think his game translates to Sunday in actual performance wise.
Well, first, it's a 43-point over-under, which is pretty small. And both of these teams are going to try to slow down the game because their quarterbacks are not very good, and they know that. You look at how the Rams treated Kellen Clemens last year, 26 attempts per game over the final 9 weeks. The Vikings drafted a first-round quarterback. They're very well aware of what Matt Castle is. And so they're going to be trying to slow down the game, win with their rushing attacks, and Sean Hill I've seen people promoting him in daily, and I don't see that at all. I mean, maybe it'll pay off for 2 TDs and, maybe you luck into 2 TDs and 210 yards or something like that, but I would not be looking at him at all. I'd much rather spend a little bit more and go for a Carson Palmer or even a Geno Smith, who has a great matchup at home against a shorthanded Raiders secondary. Actually, if you combine all the ages of the Raiders secondary starters, they're 32 years old. They got a lot of age back there. Eric Decker's going to fill it up with targets. He's going to get more targets with the Jets this year, probably by a lot, than he did last year with the Broncos. He's a candidate to finish top 5 in the NFL in targets. Marty Morning likes to throw the football. So I like that. I like the idea of that Geno Decker stack. I really like Carson Palmer, stacking him with Floyd or Fitzgerald. I don't get the love for Sean Hill at all.
Yeah, so that's the thing. We talk a lot of the misconception for people that are just starting with baseball is they try to go cheap on pitcher and then so they can spend on bats when it's not really a value thing with pitchers. You want to get your points, and the same thing for football. I feel like Sean Hill he doesn't fall in either category. He's not really a GPP play because he's going to be so heavily owned, and
And because his upside can't, like, he's just not throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Right.
He doesn't have a good ceiling or a good floor.
Yeah.
Essentially.
That's basically where it's at. And so people using Sean Hill, of course, we could be like just eating our words come Monday.
Oh, we will. Totally.
Most definitely.
Like reverse jinxing him. He's going to have like a 3-touchdown game. But no, that in that offense, I just don't see him being a top option. And Tuttle, we saw a lot of him last night in some of the games.
Well, I actually didn't see it. We saw a couple big players on Sean Hill in the games. A lot of the sites out there are actually touting him as a decent play, kind of like Evan said. But also, like Evan said, when lucking into 210 yards and 2 touchdowns, if you're going to luck into that, and that's really the really high upside that he's going to do, you don't want to touch that, even if he's priced $5,000 on FanDuel. It's just not necessary.
Yeah. I feel like if you're going to use a backup, go for like a Bernard Pierce or some at another position that's a little less important than your only quarterback spot. But
we'll get to wide receiver, but I think that's really, and I know Davis has a kind of varying opinion. He likes to spend big on wide receiver, and I guess I typically do too. But this week on FanDuel especially, I just think the pricing at wide receiver is just. It's so soft, and there's so many good options for cheap that I think that's where you go cheap, and then you spend at kind of mid-range and quarterback, and then you can spend on running back and tight end.
Yeah, I actually agree with you this week, Dan. It remains to be seen how wide receiver pricing goes moving forward. But there are like 3 to 4 guys who I think are just so massively underpriced that I could see you spending like a combined maybe 18,000 of your FanDuel cap on just your wide receivers and be fine. I think that if you did a combination of Alshon and Jeremy Maclin, and then take your pick of a cheap guy who you like. Some people like one of the St. Louis guys. I really like Justin Hunter. That's a guy that I think is a lot. Like, he's really low owned. I was looking at 50-50s yesterday. He was close to like 2% owned. And I think that is. I think he does have a floor, and a lot of people disagree with me on Justin Hunter having a floor. But just the way that offense works, I mean, like, Wisenhunt likes to throw the ball, and from what I can tell, he sort of likes what Jake Locker can do as a quarterback. And
it's a rough matchup for him. It's a rough
Locker's
matchup.
just always had problems with accuracy, so Hunter's going to be his type of wide receiver.
Evan, I know that you tweeted out earlier that it's going to be a rough week for Locker this week, but you might want to use him as a streaming option in week 2. So I'm curious as to your take on Justin Hunter.
Yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that the Titans' offense stays quiet this week, and I think that that's the most likely outcome at Arrowhead. Lots of really good pass rushers for Kansas City. A nose tackle in Dontari Poe who can collapse it up the middle. That's rare that you see a defense that can bring it off the edge and bring it up the middle. And that will really torpedo a passing game really quickly, that inside pressure and outside pressure. Again, at Arrowhead. What I'm hoping for from the Titans offense is to just see Jake Locker play competitively. I want to see Justin Hunter play 70% of the snaps. I'm selfishly hoping that he doesn't do much this week, and then we can pair him up with Locker next week against Dallas, and then they go off. So I'm hoping that those guys stay quiet, and I think that ultimately that they will. Just, it's a really, really difficult road matchup against a defense that has a lot of talent in the front seven.
So what are some wide receivers that you think might go off this week?
Ruben Randall against Detroit. The Lions feel so good about their cornerback situation that on Thursday they worked out 36-year-old street free agent Champ Bailey. So that's your first signal. I don't think that Eli Manning is going to go out and throw for 300 yards, but I think there's also a scenario where the Lions kind of pour points on the Giants, and the Giants have to kind of come back and battle back. The Giants are going to throw it. I mean, they're going to throw the ball. Their running back is a pass catcher. Ben McAdoo comes from that Packers tree. They like to chuck it around, man, and I think Eli Manning will probably end up in the range of 30 to 35 attempts and he's got 2 options to throw the football besides Rashad Jennings: Victor Cruz and Ruben Randall. Ruben Randall's 6'3", 210. They don't have a tight end. He's got 9 touchdowns among 60 career receptions. I think he's got huge upside, and I would love to spin him in a FanDuel tournament.
Yeah, I know that Davis he doesn't want anything to do with that game, so I'm going to hold off for his take and get another rational take with Mr. Puddle 05.
Yeah, my guy is a kind of obvious one. It's already been mentioned in chat a couple times, and he's another guy that was fairly high owned. But the guy I can't get myself off of because his price is so good on FanDuel is Marquez Colston for 5,700. Absence of Sproles, absence of, it looks like now, Kenny Stills. I think he's got a really nice, solid floor and really good upside if he can squeeze in a touchdown or 2. I think you'll see a good share of targets, and that's basically what you're paying for at 5,700. And then once again, if he ends up finding the end zone, then you're golden.
Yeah. Colston, another guy is Macklin.
Well, you could have used that segue when I said Golden to go to Golden Tate, too. That's a guy that a lot of guys are on this week.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
I love Golden Tate, man.
Feel free to use the segue yourself.
Well, I was trying to set, I mean... It usually works better when I don't announce it and set myself up for it, but whatever.
You could have said, speaking of Golden...
Yeah, back to you. Well, let's hear Evan's take on it, because I don't really have a strong take on Golden Tate. He's a guy, as a Packer fan, that I absolutely just despise, so I'm just
he's a
usually
local guy.
Reserve judgment and don't talk too much about him.
He's a
but
Nashville
I know he's being
guy.
talked about a lot this week.
He's a Nashville guy that had an interesting tweet last night. He's got that spunk. And
he's a douche, is what he is.
Keep him away from the donut shop. But other than that, Evan, what are your thoughts?
He's totally a douche, and I love it.
He is kind of a douche. He is. But I don't really care about that. I care about fantasy points. Calvin Johnson, so, he's a monster. But, I think that there is a pretty conceivable scenario where the Giants really sell out to stop Calvin Johnson and to really open up the rest of the field. Eric Ebron has come along slowly. Brandon Pettigrew is essentially Ben Watson. And Joseph Fourier might play 20 snaps tops. And there really is not another wide receiver there. Kevin Ogletree would be their number 3. So, Golden Tate, I think they're going to try to funnel him the football in this offense. He'll be the new offensive coordinator is Joe Lombardi, comes from the Saints. I think he'll kind of play a Lance Moore, Darren Sproulsian sort of role. I just think if the Giants really key up to stop Megatron, and I think that there's always some threat of that, the ball's going to end up going to Golden Tate a lot. Golden Tate can run after the catch. He's got great hands. I think he's a candidate for double-digit targets in this game. I feel good about it. I really like him because he's cheap, though. Because he's cheap on FanDuel. I've got a little bit of exposure to him myself.
So, what about Macklin? Macklin or Tate?
Tate for me. Macklin, this is a game where the Eagles could really blow out the Jaguars. I still think there's so many mouths to feed with Philadelphia right now that you can't really feel so confident that Jeremy Macklin's going to get more than 6 targets. Zach Ertz is ascending. Riley Cooper will be an every down player. Jordan Matthews will mix in. Darren Sproles is going to be involved. LaShawn McCoy is going to get a ton of carries. The spread on this game is 10 points. So, the Jaguars are expected to kind of get spanked here. And I don't think that Foles is going to have to throw more than 27 times for the Eagles to kind of whip the Jaguars. They're in Philly as well. So Macklin just doesn't provide enough upside for me. I think that Tate gives you a little bit higher ceiling, and I think his floor is really steady. I think that there are 2 wide receivers / tight ends that are going to be getting the ball a lot in Detroit, Golden Tate and Calvin Johnson. And then in Philadelphia, there could be 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah. So Macklin, Colston, Justin Hunter, Marquise Lee, another like low price. Like those are all value guys I think you'll see in week 1. Kelvin Benjamin. If Cam Newton is not on the field, I just don't think that he is someone you want to take. Davis, you had one matchup last night where someone played, was it Benjamin and Cooks in the same lineup?
I mean, some people played Cooks against me and head-to-head. I also saw some people on guys like Hakeem Nicks. I mean, that's this. If you're trusting Hakeem Nicks in your head-to-heads, I mean, good luck. Like, pun not intended. Andrew Luck is definitely better than I say that he is on Twitter, but he's probably not good enough to resurrect that guy's career.
All right, so let's. Speaking of quarterbacks, you like that, Dan?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Nice.
Speaking of quarterbacks, let's talk about Week 1 quarterbacks. Obviously, you've got options like Peyton Manning, like Stafford, or Jake Cutler. Jake Cutler is probably the guy I've seen kind of tout the most, other than Sean Hill. So. Evan, we'll start with you about quarterbacks that you really like for Week 1.
Shoot. Yeah, I mean, I like Cutler, no doubt. I know that Davis really likes the matchup for Alshon Jeffrey, and I do too. But one thing to keep in mind is that the Bills' slot corner is Nickel Roby. He's 5'7", 169 pounds. And Brandon Marshall in 3 wide receiver sets plays slot. Brandon Marshall is 6'4.5" and 229 pounds. Nickel Roby is 5'7", 169 pounds with 29 and 3/4 inch arms. So that is an incredible mismatch. I mean, I don't know. You would think that the Bills would be smart enough to adjust and stick Stephon Gilmore on Brandon Marshall all game because Gilmore has some size. But this is Jim Schwartz.
Gilmore might not play as well. He's looking doubtful for Sunday's game.
He did practice the last 2 days, so I think he's going to play. I know he's listed as questionable, but
I think it turned to doubtful today.
No,
I think there was new news today. I'll trust you on it, but
no, check it out, man. I mean, I haven't looked at Twitter in an hour, so but
let's see what I can find.
I like both those guys' matchups. That's really good news for Jay Cutler. The defensive front is pretty tough for Buffalo. But the matchups are really good in the back end, really, really good. And Jay Cutler was really sharp in the preseason.
Yeah, Marshall's the guy that I've been targeting over Jeffrey, so it's like just a guaranteed lock that Jeffrey's the one that's going to go off. After we've talked about how much that Cutler targets Marshall, and then we had the information about the corner. So yeah. Marshall's a guy I've been heavily like. If you can get Marshall and Demaryius Thomas in the same lineup, it's a sexy lineup. And that was like part of my DraftKings GPP lineup yesterday. Quarterbacks that you like, Davis?
Yeah, I mean, Cutler is my main guy. I also really like Carson Palmer in that matchup on Monday night. I think it does present a little bit of a problem in terms of San Diego towards the second half of last year really slowed down, and they were just running a lot more and chewing up a ton of clock on their drives. But now that we see that Andre Ellington is out, I mean, I know Bruce Arians does love any guy who used to play for the Steelers, but John Dwyer's not going to touch the ball more than, probably 15 times in this game. So I think Palmer's airing it out all game. He has 2, just massive wide receivers, the same way Cutler does. So I think Palmer's in a really good position. And then obviously, I mean, people are probably more on Kaepernick than they are on Cutler just due to the matchup. I mean, Dallas's defense is really, really bad. Like, just so, as a Dallas fan, like, every season at the beginning of the season, I talk myself into the team just a little bit, and this year I can't do it at all. Not even one. It's time to pay the piper. Like, it's going to be bad.
For Arizona, they have a really good matchup as well. San Diego's cornerbacks are terrible. Brandon Flowers, I know he's got a big name, but last year he was like a bottom 15 corner in Pro Football Focus. Sharice
and the other corner was even worse.
Bottom 10. And then the other guy they got, look, I like Jason Verrett long term, but he's a rookie. And rookie corners struggle in the NFL. And he's small. And he's going against big wide receivers. They got John Brown too. Don't forget about him. That is the quarterback Carson Palmer that I'm using the most in my own daily lineups. I wrote about that today. I wrote before Thursday that I would start him over Aaron Rodgers this week. I mean, I think that the one thing that was interesting to me though is that over under is only 45 points. And I think that the Vegas dudes are looking at the fact that San Diego did slow down games last year, but they played more no huddle in this preseason. There were reports from their OTAs that they were trying to play faster. I don't think that they're going to be like Denver or Philly or anything like that, where they're trying to, really making a concerted effort to fire off 70 plays. But they're not going to be that slow, super ball control, run committed team that they were last year. And I also think that Arizona's defense is going to give up points. That defense has lost a ton of players. Darrell Washington, Carlos Dansby, Matthew isn't playing. They also lost Darnell Dockett. So I think that that game has the potential to be pretty high scoring. Love Carson Palmer.
Dan, what about you this week? As far, I mean, that's the second Carson Palmer reference. Yesterday, I think it was JJ that was really high on him as well. So, of course, a late round QB, he's going to be high on. But Tuttle, what about you as far as quarterback situation goes?
I mean, they touched on pretty much anyone I'm looking at. Jay Cutler is finding his way into most of my lineups. I really don't have a problem going Palmer if that's the way you choose to go. The other guy that was kind of sneaking in, even though he's priced extremely high, but again, if you go the way roster construction is working out on FanDuel, you really it's hard to allocate salary because the cap is so soft this week. So you can kind of find yourself in a place where you're paying up for Peyton Manning, which a lot of people it looks like did do this week. It looks like he was around 18 to 20% owned last night in FanDuel contests. So there's a decent amount on Peyton, and there obviously always are going to be a decent amount of people on Peyton Manning. But I'm finding myself kind of switching back and forth between him and Cutler, depending on how the rest of my lineup's shaking out.
Very nice. As far as your draft with Davis, who are what slate did you guys choose? Early? So who were your two quarterbacks, Davis, and who was Dan's?
I mean, I took Sean Hill just because he was the cheapest quarterback on the slate, but I also took Drew Brees. My strategy in that early slate on Fantasy Elite is just to load up on Saints. I think the Falcons are really bad. I don't know.
They're changing mindsets this year. What are you talking about?
No, they suck.
You haven't watched Hard Knocks.
I don't watch Hard Knocks.
You haven't watched it. Brian Cox is going to get them in shape.
Is that what it's going to be? I don't think so.
He's bringing the swag to the Falcons.
Most of my Falcons information comes from Andrew Parsons on Twitter, who is a self-hating Falcons fan. I'm a self-hating Cowboys fan, so I get it. I know how it goes.
Who was Tuttle's two quarterbacks?
Trash. His team sucks. Oh, let me pull it up right now. There's no way. Let's see. Tuttle's rocking out the Matt Ryan Tannehill combination.
Heck yeah.
So that's definitely going to end well.
Well, actually, one of those guys is the Contrarians play, Sean Siegel's play. Wrote up Ryan Tannehill. It'll be interesting to see how that offense works with Bill Lazor coming over. So I can see. I actually like that pick a lot, kind of as a GPP option. First week, we're really not going to know what's going to happen. Obviously, trying to be a little more up-tempo. He mentioned how Foles found success running the ball with the Eagles last year, and Foles really isn't very athletic. So a guy like Tannehill could really pick up a lot of peripheral rushing yards, which would obviously not suck for fantasy stats.
Definitely. Tannehill would be like one of those, like the contrarian play that I feel like on a two-quarterback site, like draft day, would be nice. But yeah. Speaking of contrarian plays, running back contrarian plays, Davis, who do you like as far as low-owned, high-ceiling running backs this week?
I think Stephen Ridley. I talked about it on the show yesterday, but he just has so much upside when Gronkowski is in the lineup and in games with their favorite. I know you guys are all shaking your head, but I don't know why everyone is all concerned about like his usage all of a sudden. The only reason anyone thought he wasn't going to make the team was because Mike Reese of ESPN had a hot take, and he said that because Brandon Bolden had more carries than Stephen Ridley in the third preseason game, that Ridley wasn't going to make the roster. I'm not a believer in James White. I think he's a mediocre talent. He was a backup in college. He'll be a backup in the NFL. Brandon Bolden has been Ridley's backup historically. I don't understand what's all of a sudden changing in the Patriots offense to make everyone think that Ridley is worthless.
He has a pretty short leash, you have to admit.
Sure, if he fumbles, but you're not playing him in cash games.
Hey, James White outsnapped Melvin Gordon last year, so let's not call him back up here.
Well, Wisconsin coaches.
I'm not saying it was the right call, but he did outsnap.
I think we've seen from this week that Wisconsin coaches are just kind of
no. Gary Anderson. That's don't
crazy.
Even get started.
Yeah, it's crazy. Speaking of college football, tonight, 10 p.m. Central, 11 Eastern, we'll have the college football show with Ben Pritchett, Jordan Case, and Jordan Case's roommate. Forget that guy's name. Oh, yeah, Davis Maddock. So they'll be on Insiders TV tonight talking college football. Should be a pretty good slate for week 2. I'll be going to that Ole Miss Vanderbilt game tomorrow to see Vanderbilt just get... I mean, they're going to get beat so bad. It's going to be terrible. Back to football and running backs, though. Evan, who are some running backs that you like as far as top performers? So in that top tier, let's see, you've got Charles, you've got McCoy, and who's the third running back? Peterson?
Oh, Matt Forte.
Forte, yeah, okay.
That's one concern for Cutler that you got to deal with is that the Bears kind of just crush the Bills in the first 2 quarters, and then they can just ride out the run. And one thing I like about Forte is that the Bears really don't have a backup running back right now. Sean Drawn is a journeyman, and Kadeem Carey he didn't look like an NFL running back in the preseason. Exposed. I remember watching him in Arizona in Rich Rod's offense, and I liked him, but I'm almost chalking that up to Rich Rod's offense, making him look better than he was. He went to the combine. He was exposed there. He was exposed in the preseason. He doesn't run with power. He's not very athletic, and the bottom line is that the Bears do not have another running back. So late in the game, Matt Forte is going to get all those carries.
And that's nice.
He might end up playing 95% of the snaps legitimately, and you don't see that from running backs very often.
Yeah, that's nice, especially when you're coming from the Michael Bush situation.
Yeah, really.
Just didn't know.
One guy that I really like that a lot of people are not talking about is Monty Ball. And I know people were talking about him from a redraft perspective, but I haven't seen a lot of discussion about him as a daily league play. And it wouldn't surprise me if he finishes this week as the #1 overall fantasy back. This is a bad Colts defense. I think that the Broncos are going to spank the Colts. And I think that it will be evident, very early in the game that they're just destroying them. The Colts don't have Robert Mathis, the runner-up defensive player of the year, and he essentially their only good player on defense. Monty Ball might end up with 27 carries, and in a Peyton Manning offense, he could score 3 TDs. And people are kind of wary of him. Didn't see him play much in the preseason, but this is a great matchup, and it's the perfect kind of game for Monty Ball to just pile up rushing attempts.
Yeah, I think I've been convinced on the Monty Ball train. Real quick, if you had to pick one out of the top tier of running backs, Charles, McCoy, Forte, or AP, who would it be?
Charles against Tennessee. You're at home at Arrowhead. There's no Dwayne Bowe. Not only does Jamal Charles carry the Chiefs' rushing attack, he carries their passing attack. And I expect him to continue to do that. Was the only NFL running back last year to lead his team in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. And then you go up against a Titans defense that is transitioning to a 3-4. doesn't really have a sturdy nose tackle. Sammy Lee Hill is kind of just a jag. Inside linebackers are Wesley Woodyard, who's like 227 pounds. Zach Brown, who's actually 244, but he plays like he's 227. So what you need is a big two-gap nose tackle to occupy the interior offensive linemen, so that those guards don't get up and get their hands on the little run and chase linebackers. And Sammy Lee Hill, I don't think he's good enough to be a premier NFL nose tackle who commands double teams like that and occupies blockers. So I think that those blockers, even though they're not great, we know that the Chiefs' offensive line is not some special offensive line, but I think they'll look good in the first game because they'll get to that second level and they'll grab Wesley Woodyard and Zach Brown and Jamal Charles when he gets to the second level. Whoop, I mean, see ya. It's over, man. I think that his matchup is ideal. I think he could end up with 1 million touches, and he's the one running back that I'm paying up for this week.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. If Tuttle or Davis, has your opinion changed as far as running back goes?
Nope.
No, it's you guys. I never want to say anyone's really a must play, but I think Charles is as close as it gets. I think if you're going into your game without Jamal Charles, I think you're immediately heading for a disadvantage, and you're not the odds-on favorite if you're going against him and you don't have him.
Yeah, I mean, to Evan's point, you've got the Titans are again thin at the linebacker spot. You got Colin McCarthy that was hurt; he's out for the season. You've got Akeem Ayers, who they thought, coming into last year that he was going to be a big time contributor, and now it looks like he's going to be a backup. So that's kind of disappointing. So
Titans are a train wreck, Dave. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're not. Thankfully, I've got daily fantasy.
Right.
It was 3 years ago. If the Titans lost, it was bad because it was just kind of a given that Vanderbilt was also going to lose. So it's if the Titans lost, my day was done. And now it's just there's some times where I don't even watch a lot of the Titans games. I'm just watching everyone fixing to. That's my southern accent coming out. Everyone about to score, on the Red Zone channel. So, yeah, when the Titans get good, then I'll start following closely again. But most of my cheering for the Titans this week is going to be for Justin Hunter. Other than that, yeah.
One more note on the Titans D-line. Mike Martin, who actually I think is, he's one of their few good run defenders. And he would play in a rotation behind Casey, who's really a penetrating defensive tackle. He's a pass rusher, and they're going to try to make him into a 3-4 end. But anyways, Mike Martin, I think he's listed as doubtful or out this week. And then Ropati Patoatua, who is the left defensive end. He essentially plays that Red Bryant role. He is playing with a cast on his hand.
Yeah. And
defensive linemen need their hands, man. Again, start Jamal Charles.
Yeah, you also have Antonio Johnson, who's out for the seat.
Yep.
Big time change to the Titans defense, which I guess since we're talking about it, we talk about game strategy in the past. If a team is just going to score and maybe score a lot, then you look for the other team's wide receivers. And who is that wide receiver, Davis?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh my gosh! I set you up perfectly. I set you up perfectly. I'm not even repeating it. Forget it. We're moving on.
Okay. Well, I was looking at my golf lineups, man.
Nope. Talking game strategy set you up perfectly for a Justin Hunter rational take instead of just a hot take.
If anyone wants to hear a rational take on Justin Hunter, it's that Kansas City's corners are very bad. If you remember Eric Decker's 4-touchdown game last year, every single one of those targets was thrown at Marcus Cooper. Justin Hunter's going to have a physical advantage on almost every cornerback in the league, but particularly over Marcus Cooper and the rest of the Chiefs secondary. Their front seven is very good, which will discourage the Titans from running. If they really are serious about using Sean Green instead of Bishop Sankey, they're already at an immediate disadvantage in the running game. because Sean Green is so bad, and Justin Hunter's price is such that you're gaining upside that you can't get from other players around his position. The range of outcomes is really wide because he is splitting time at the X position in Ken Whisenhunt's offense with Nate Washington. But I just think that he's a better player than Nate Washington. And sure, Coach Davis Maddock isn't making the play calls, and if I was, I wouldn't ever have someone like Nate Washington on the roster. But when/if Hunter gets in the game, he's someone that the defense has to pay attention to. He has, I think, like 36 career targets, including the preseason. 8 of those targets have turned into touchdowns.
Davis,
it's just,
how much do you factor in game flow?
I think you have to factor in game flow a lot, and they're dogs, and so they need to be throwing a lot. I think game flow is one of the most important things, and if you have an accurate way of predicting it, or if you just look at the Vegas lines, I think it's something that you should use.
Yeah, I know that Dan does a lot. I just was curious as like team stats, like where that falls into the game flow. If you're just
Whisenhunt is sort of a hard case because he's times as an offensive coordinator where he's been, in the top 5 of pass attempts in the league multiple times, and then other times he's been in the bottom third of the league in pass attempts. He adjusts to the talent that he's presented with, and that's why I mentioned earlier about a lot of the stuff. He likes Jake Locker. I mean, I don't like Jake Locker as an NFL quarterback, but that doesn't necessarily matter if Whisenhunt has talked himself into him.
Davis, you're getting ahead of yourself, man. We need Jake Locker and Justin Hunter to be quiet this week, so we can roll them next week. All right, man? Be a forward thinker, Davis.
That's true. You know what? I'll totally sacrifice that because watching Justin Hunter I want him to score so many touchdowns on Morris Claiborne that Claiborne retires after the game.
No.
I want him to walk off the field and say, that was so embarrassing, I'm never putting on a jersey again.
Here's how it will go. Justin Hunter will get like 1 target, maybe 2 targets the first 3 quarters, and Davis will be so upset. Like it's inevitable. It's like he will be so tilted. Will have retired within that 2-hour span, like 3 or 4 times. Like, I'm quitting. Like, and then Justin Hunter will get like all the garbage. Like, there are going to be garbage time points in the fourth
Absolutely.
quarter. So that's going to be where you see Justin Hunter, and you also see. I mean, I think as an upside GPP play, you've got Kendall Wright.
Stop it! Never put the words upside and Kendall Wright together ever again.
Okay, no, but if you're listening, like, what happens in garbage time?
Not Kendall Wright touchdowns.
Oh,
I'll tell you
PPR.
that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a PPR league, what happens in garbage time? You just get like these quick, short defenses just kind of drop back. They don't give up the long pass. You just get these quick dink and dumps, and I can see Kendall Wright having 9 or 10 catches.
I mean, Kendall Hunter has like a 0.9% touchdown ratio, like percentage of
Kendall
catches
Hunter?
for his career.
You
Kendall
said,
Wright.
I mean, yeah. That's interesting though. Kendall Wright plus Justin Hunter equals Kendall Hunter.
That is interesting.
And by interesting, I mean not interesting at all. Okay, real quick, Tuttle, who are some defenses that you're targeting this week?
Defenses, it just kind of depends on the site.
Like, what about like cheap defenses, like Tampa Bay, for instance, if Cam Newton doesn't play?
Yeah, I can see that as an option. I think I don't have any problems taking the Lions for 4,600 on FanDuel, and I know that's kind of the direction a lot of guys went. On FanDuel for 4,900, I'd rather have the Jets for 100 more. I think they're one of the top options overall, and then once you put price into the equation, I think they're probably easily the top option on FanDuel. DraftKings, I'm actually the first kind of serviceable option that I came across was the Vikings at 2,700. They're going to have an improved defense this year. We already talked about Sean Hill, who will be getting to play against. If that game gets into a scenario where they have Sean Hill dropping back at all, that's certainly going to work in their favor. So you got that, but then you also have the threat of Cordarrelle Patterson returning kicks for him. So I think Vikings are my favorite defense on DraftKings for their price.
I wrote them up as well. I agree with all those points.
Yeah, you also have Evan. Anybody else like such as the Bengals that you like for Week 1? Like, who are some defenses that you might be targeting?
I think you guys mentioned Tampa Bay.
I did.
But
yep.
Yeah, I'm going with them.
So defenses might be like the easiest thing to translate from season to daily because most or a lot of people stream their defenses. A lot of smart people stream their defenses.
That's a good point. And also, look, I love Cam Newton, but his strength is not really as a passer.
Yeah.
And Mike Shula is not going to send him on the run very often. I mean, they're not going to have any design quarterback runs in the playbook if he plays.
Yeah.
So you're already getting Cam Newton at about 60% of what he is, and then the fact that he's injured. The game is in Tampa. I like defenses that play at home. I think the Tampa defense is going to be sick this year. I think they'll be a top 5 fantasy defense. Gerald McCoy, Adrian Claiborne, Michael Johnson, Clinton McDonald is a guy they got from Seattle who had 5 sacks in like a really lightly used role last year. Levante David, and then they've got Altron Werner and Mark Barron in the back. I mean, they've got talent. They've got Lovie Smith as the defensive coordinator. He is long been a guy who gets takeaways on defense. And I could see this being a 0 touchdown, 3 interception game if Cam Newton plays. And then even if he doesn't, you get Derek Anderson. So I really like Tampa Bay as a fairly high floor and definitely high ceiling defensive start in week 1.
Tuttle, do you remember Altron Werner from last year?
I do. Didn't you say he was like awesome or?
No, I thought
no. You said he was really bad.
I thought he was trash.
Yeah.
He actually had a really good season.
He's really good
and got.
Yeah, because you wanted to play Antonio Brown against him week 1, hardcore. I just said don't do it. They're not that bad.
I was totally
wrong.
This
is how stupid the Titans are. They wanted to bench Altron Werner for Tommy Campbell, who they just recently cut. Under the new coaching staff. But the old coaching staff, same GM, they wanted to bench Altron Werner for Tommy Campbell. They tried to do it all offseason, and then finally, when the season began, they put Altron Werner back in the starting lineup, and he was like essentially a shutdown corner for the entire year.
That's why I was trying to play him because
Dave was trying to target him.
Yeah, it's he's not even that good. They're trying to start this.
Except for a stupid team like that, you can't be like, oh well, their actions mean something. You know what I mean? I know that's difficult to differentiate.
Yep. No, 3 years ago, I'd be mad at you, Evan, but now, I'm not going to be mad at you because you can call the Titans stupid. It's okay.
They are stupid.
Your team's not as dumb as mine.
They drafted Taylor Lewan, and he's number 11 overall, and he's a backup. They signed Michael Ruse, who was like the worst player in the history of Pro Football Focus. And they're starting him over their number 11 overall pick.
Also you got Michael Orr in there as well. And we saw Michael Orr last year.
Right. He's not good. Why would teams sign bad players?
The Blind Side.
Because he's got a movie
story.
It's a true story. It's a really big big movie here in Tennessee because it took place in Memphis. So they're just trying to sell tickets.
That's really why they signed him?
No.
I guess that's the only logical explanation.
No, there was no logical explanation. That's why I was confused and then went, like you said, and signed Taylor Lewan. Then lots of Titans talk on this show, but that's a featured game, that Titans Kansas City game. It's going to be probably an exciting game. That Detroit New York Giants game, I'm looking forward to that. We don't really know what's going to happen to that. Any other games that we really haven't talked about, Dan or Davis, that you think might deserve some attention this week?
Not really. I just real quick before we go, I want to get Evan's take on this. I've heard a lot of people talking about an improved Saints defense. Another year of experience for Vaccaro. They signed Jarius Byrd, some stuff like that. Is that sort of scaring you off of the Falcons wide receivers at all? Because they both are pretty attractive for their price.
Yeah, not off the Falcons wide receivers. But it is a concern. It's they had a top 5 defense last year. Quietly, they were number 2 against the pass. They added Jarius Byrd. Akeem Hicks and Cameron Jordan are still young players, getting better.
Getting better.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't start Matt Ryan in a daily league this week.
Yeah.
No.
Just I keep coming back to Roddy White's price tag on FanDuel, and then I've heard it all over Twitter this week about the Saints defense, and that way back when NFL lines were first posted, the Falcons were 1.5 point favorites, and the line has moved 5.5 points. The Saints are now favored by 4 points. Well, I guess depending on the book. I think you can get different lines, but it's moved a lot since they were first posted.
One note about that game, I talked to Mike Triplett, who is the ESPN Saints reporter, and I wanted to get his, because the Saints cut Champ Bailey, and they drafted a guy who has 3 names out of Nebraska, I believe, Stanley John Baptiste, and he did not claim a starting job. So they're going with Patrick Robinson, who is legitimately awful. He's an awful, awful player. He just gets burned all the time. He's small. So they're going to go with him opposite Keenan Lewis, who's like an elite shutdown corner, basically. So I talked to Mike Triplett, and I wanted to know who he thought that Keenan Lewis would go against. And he said a fair bet that he goes against Julio. It doesn't mean that don't start Julio or anything like that. I'm starting him in leagues, but that could open things up a little bit for Roddy White, who's going against, statistically one of the worst cornerbacks that we've seen play over the last 5 years. I really, really like Roddy White. His FanDuel price is very, very reasonable, and that has the potential to be a high-scoring game against, 2 high-scoring offenses indoors.
Cool.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left, so real quick, we'll play like the lightning round. Instead of 3 words, we'll just give you like 1 sentence, basically. So first, with Ellington probably being out for a while, Jonathan Dwyer, does he have value this week at all? Dan?
No.
Davis?
No.
Evan?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't like him, but he's got value. He could score 2 goal line TDs.
Okay. Fair enough. With those wide receiving options, I can see that, especially if there's a little PI in the end zone. Okay. Next one. Kaepernick, really the 49ers offense. Yay or nay this week? Dan?
Yay.
Davis?
Yep.
Oh,
Evan?
hell yeah.
Oh! Oh! Very nice. All right. RG3. Yay or nay?
Forgot how to play quarterback.
Kirk Cousins will start the second half.
Oh!
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, God.
No way. No way.
Everyone in
I want to
Washington.
see him be good at football again before I do anything with him.
Everyone in Washington thinks that Kirk Cousins is going to be starting by game 5. Everyone in Washington has jumped all the way off the RG3 bandwagon.
Oh, just because I think part of that is just he can't stay healthy.
He's got a case of the yips.
He can't slide, dude.
Yeah. People were saying it. I saw it probably 20 times last night that some of the moves that Russell Wilson did last night, it would have been not safe for work if RG3 was doing those same moves. He would have got his head, his decapa would have been tated, as Michael Scott likes to say on The Office. So it would have been really bad. As far as any other news that we missed, Evan, I know you got you do some of the news there with Roto World. Any big time news that we might not have covered today?
Shoot, off the top of my head. No, I would say, though, just a couple random thoughts as I'm just looking at the game slate. Texans are kind of an interesting defense, I think, because of how bad RG3 legitimately looked like a bad player in the preseason. And I know that preseason is not always an indication of regular season performance, but I think that in this case it very well might be. We didn't talk about the Jets D. People are worried about their cornerbacks, which I think is really, really overblown. Derek Carr is a rookie traveling cross-country to face a Rex Ryan defense in a 1 p.m. Eastern time game. This is I know that Derek Carr looked good in the preseason, but this is a kind of, I know I'm choosing my narratives here, but I think that the Jets are a really good bet defensively. And then, I don't know, I guess that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, you've got narratives here are always welcome.
All right.
Right, Davis?
Narrative Street.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that will like do it for the majority of today's show. Thanks to Evan Silva from Roto World for joining us. Again, if you tuned in late, you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Fantasy Insiders, and see the show. Also tonight we have coming up the college football show. You don't want to miss that. It's always a good time. And then, of course, we have our subscription plans ready. We've got the optimizer, our lineup optimizer. You can lock and exclude players. It's ready, and tomorrow we'll be adding some additional sites to that. So it's a pretty fun tool to kind of mess around with. Final thoughts from either of you two, Tuttle or Davis?
Make some money. Don't play Sean Hill.
Hey, do you guys have a wide receiver that you're willing to pay up for big time this week?
Demarius.
Okay.
I
What about Dez?
He'd be a contrarian play.
The problem with Dez over Demarius is that the Cowboys' defense is so bad that he has to do it on like 3 fewer drives than Demarius is going to get to do it. Because the Cowboys ran the least plays in the NFL last year, and their defense is even worse now. Not that he can't do it, because he's Dez Bryant, and he's one of the 3 best wide receivers in the NFL, but for cash games, Demarius is a much safer bet.
Yeah, I think Demarius, especially without Welker, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's so many options in that Denver game, which is kind of scary with the Manny Sanders play if you're playing him in cash games. Tuttle, any closing thoughts from you?
No, just don't play Sean Hill. That's about it.
Just don't play Sean Hill.
Agreed.
Don't do it.
You guys are like really, really setting us up for big time crow eating on Monday. Monday show.
For sure. It's gonna happen. Whatever.
Monday show.
It's bad. I don't care. I don't care about the results. It's a bad place. Don't do it.
It's the process.
It's the process, like we talk about. Speaking of results and process, Monday show will be a fun show. Dr. Renee Miller will be hosting. So we'll be talking industry stuff. We'll be talking all the brain stuff. She loves talking about brains because she is what is she? A
neuroscientist.
Is that like, I was trying to think of like if there's a...
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
She is legitimately crazy smart too, man. Like I heard her on RotoViz radio. She was super impressive.
Yeah, but she still doesn't believe Buster Posey crushes left-handed pitching, so I'm not convinced.
And on that note, we'll see y'all later. Check us out Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Insiders TV show.
Sweet.